Have it. Mr Kevin Hollinrake.
Okay. And it's an honour to follow the Honourable Lady for Vauxhall. And she makes some very important points about manifesto promises and living up to those promises. There are some other promises we need to live up to as well. The Prime Minister, I've heard time and time again from colleagues in this House or speaking on the media, when they talk, they criticise the Prime Minister for setting out her red lines and not budging from their red lines. But for me, those red lines simply represent the promises that were made prior to the referendum. It certainly wasn't just a binary option about staying or leaving. The question about what leaving meant is absolutely critical to this debate, because the promises that Vote Leave set out, as she was a member, I think, of the Vote Leave campaign. So I apologise, she shakes her head. But the Vote Leave, which was the primary advocate for leaving, quite clearly set out those promises been to control our borders, control our laws, control our money, whilst having a free trade agreement. It was quite clear in the Vote Leave manifesto. I've read it several times, Mr Speaker, and the words were, there is a free trade area that stretches from Iceland to the borders of Russia, and we will be part of it. Those were the promises that were made. Now, the Prime Minister, I believe, has come back to this House with a deal that does meet the promises that were made. That's what her deal does. And there is not a single amendment in this order paper, a single motion in this order paper, that lives up to those promises. All the rest incorporate compromises that move outside those red lines. She's come back with the Goldilocks deal. Not too hard, not too soft, but still people won't accept this deal. And I think we will look back. Certain members in this House will look back, potentially, if we don't approve the Prime Minister's deal in the days and weeks to come, hopefully days, may look back and think that was our opportunity that is gone. And that's the deal we should support, the Prime Minister's deal. Because having a small business background, Mr Speaker, I do not think it is right that we should think of taking a risk, an uncalculated risk, with the lives and livelihoods of small business people that we know could be affected by a no-deal exit. So we definitely need to leave with a deal. So how do we leave with a deal if we don't support the Prime Minister's deal? It means we have to move at least one of those red lines. And I've got to say, from my perspective, despite the fact it would breach the manifesto promises, I would move the red line on the single market. Because I think that most of the challenges, and will be challenges, certainly particularly between Northern Ireland and Ireland, are solved by membership of the single market. 80% of the border challenges are about the single market. Barnier said it himself. Customs checks need not happen at the border. We can do without the customs union, but we need the single market for regulatory standards, particularly on foods. A humble cottage pie sat in a supermarket shelf in Northern Ireland has passed over that border typically 7 times. Without the regulatory checks, if you had regulatory checks, it would have to happen, those checks would have to happen every single time according to EU rules. And they make the rules, and we've been part of that for 46 years. We cannot simply say now, we don't want to be part of those, we don't agree with your rules, despite the fact that we've been happy, or relatively happy, to sit within those rules for 46 years. So there are 2 motions that I will be supporting this evening. One is Amendment D, which is brought forward by a number of colleagues here, my old friend Grantham and Aberravon and many other colleagues who have been big advocates of Common Market 2.0. It's a free trade agreement. I have concerns about it, about the customs union, about the longevity of the customs union, our ability to exit that customs union. Subsection C in the amendment says we will need to agree with the European Union our exit from the customs union. And I can't see what incentive they would have to let us leave. I've got to say we would also, I think, if we approve that, have to agree lots of things with the opposition. I haven't got an issue with that at all, working cross-party on this, but I do fear that the Labour front bench, as we take this legislation forward over the next months and years, if we approve this, will ask a higher and higher price of us in terms of taking that legislation through, because there is a political divide between the front bench opposite and the front bench here.